it has a lot to do with why I wanted to dedicate my life to healing, my life to trying to help anyone and everyone obtain that happiness and obtain that sort of that peace. And it's the funny thing about it is yeah, you know, it you have to work on it. It's crazy. You have to work also to enjoy it. I'm at this stage in my life where I am having to be intentional about enjoying the blessings.
You're listening to Guards Down. This is Greg Washington.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this next episode of Guards Down. I have with me today Seneca Vaughn. Seneca, how are you doing?
I am doing phenomenal, and thank you so much for having me on today. I think it's great.
Indeed. So before we get started, you know, we were just talking, and I'm glad that you're on because this is a chance for me to get to let all of my followers and viewers and everyone know how strong my support system is, you know, what kind of background and pedigree I come from. And so you and I, we started at the academy together, the prep school. I knew you from day one, and you have always been this shining light and star, you know, and just being you and being supportive of your brothers and sisters. So, you know, I just want to just give my complete thank you and humbleness and just say, I love you from the bottom of my heart for just being you.
Thank you. You're trying to get me to cry. I didn't prepare. I didn't bring any tissues over here, Greg.
Well, look, no, we're not trying to get you to cry. But we may have some moments to come. Hey, look, it's going to come. It's meant to be. Okay. The objective for, you know, this show, just like all the other ones, is to help save a soul. So I'm hoping that someone that's out there listening can hear from you and get some tools and techniques that might help them, you know, fight another day. So, you know, this is what it's all about. So in getting started, please tell us about yourself. I'm going to let you know, the floor is yours.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Louisiana, a small town called Hanna that's about a little less than an hour south of Shreveport. I graduated high school in 2000 and headed up to the United States Military Academy via the prep school, as you mentioned before. After West Point, I served 7 years as an air defense artillery officer. And I was stationed in numerous places. Korea was a place. South Korea is a place we were at. I was at for about 5 years, and it was a great time. My daughter was born there. My son was raised there, and I'm married to Major Kendrick Vaughn. I actually met him there. So talk about culture. Korean culture is it's like a staple in this family. But after I transitioned out of the military in 2012, I started studying East Asian medicine, and I started at in San Francisco at a college called American College of Traditional Chinese Medicine. My husband is still in the military, and I only did 2 years of school there, and I finished my degree at Pacific College of Oriental Medicine in New York, and I recently graduated from that school in April. So this journey of East Asian medicine has been a 6-year journey and worth absolutely every second of that time, and it's going to be a lifetime of learning. So that's my quick story in a bit of a nutshell.
I got you. And so, you know, I got to pick on Kenny for a moment, just because, you know, he went to West Point also, and he's a little brother. So, you know what I mean? Like, you know, we in the same fraternity and everything. So tell us, in a race, who's going to win?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Are you telling between you and Kenny or me and Kenny?
Between you and Kenny. So everybody, they don't know, you were a track star. You ran track at West Point. You are a D1 collegiate athlete, and people need to know them skills. So Kenny recently posted a video of you guys playing, or you guys running with the kids, online, and he was huffing and puffing while you was in stride moving.
Now he's not here right now. He'd have to get online.
So
listen.
In a race,
honestly, let me tell you, and I say this with such a humble heart, I have tried to beat him. I have tried to beat him probably since we first met. Actually, when I first met him, I took him on a run. And I was impressed. And I'm still impressed. He's a beast. He can win, but I give it my all. I really do. So yeah, he's the reigning champ in this house. I say that humbly, and I have given every effort. Trust me.
I got you. Okay. Well, graduated West Point, went off in the ADA. And then, had a family, the whole nine. It sounds like you have had the life you wanted. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah. You know what, Greg? I have. And I think about it every single day, how blessed I am. It took a lot to be, in this space where I'm at, getting a chance to attend the military academy, getting a whole family of brothers and sisters, like you mentioned, we are a family, and then to find love and to raise, children. I know that every single morning when I wake up, I know that. And I think it's because of that blessing, and I came from really, really, humble beginnings. We did not have a lot of money at all. Sometimes, the lights would go out, things like that. So the appreciation for what I have, I kind of, it's like a screen in front of my face, every single day. And I think it's why it has a lot to do with why I wanted to dedicate my life to healing, my life to trying to help anyone and everyone obtain that happiness and obtain that sort of that peace. And it's the funny thing about it is you have to work on it. It's crazy. You have to work also to enjoy it. I'm at this stage in my life where I am having to be intentional about enjoying the blessings. No, if that's not interesting, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, I like how you put that. You have to be intentional with it. I mean, it is absolute the truth. And so I like that. I do. I mean, expound on it a little more. Share, because a lot of people think, or the question is out there, it's kind of like love, right? Can you really know love unless you know hurt and pain?
Right. Absolutely. And so I think for me, and why I feel like I have to be intentional, even though the love is surrounding me, I think it deals with our environment. And East Asian medicine, with studying that, and I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but, we don't live our lives in a vacuum as much as we would like to. As much as there's really no way of sheltering yourself from what's happening around you, from what your neighbor does, from what, our leaders do in our society. You cannot run from it. And so I think with that being said, that is what we are all having to work through. And in this society that we've created for ourselves, it's very, very, very fast-paced, very demanding life that we have here in the United States. And I think that is where that, needing to be intentional comes from. We all have to keep a roof over our heads. We all have to, feed ourselves, feed our children, if we have them, our loved ones. And so it's easy to kind of get very swept up in the day-to-day taskings. And we're not even talking about the other complexities that come to the table, with our pride, with our ego, with our, those seven deadly sins, as we say. So when you add even, those complexities to it, you have to be very intentional about enjoying, because all of those things, the stress of the environment, the thoughts in our mind, and I'm referring to those, those 7 deadly sins. And in Chinese medicine, those would be 5 very emotions. If we allow those to, which is very easy to allow those to kind of outweigh and take precedence in our day, you have to be intentional about blocking all of that out.
Indeed. And so, to kind of like dive into it, because the need for you to be intentional, of course, means that you went through something, right? So can you kind of share with us your experience of the trauma and the grief that you went through that set you on the path of wanting to learn and practice, ancient Chinese medicine and being intentional with your happiness?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I feel like just being born, as soon as you step and you take your first breath into this world, trauma begins, in a sense. Even the idea of you're in this resting place, you're in this inside your mother's womb. You were calm, you were peaceful there, God willing, but then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're kind of thrown into life. And if you were my son, you were yanked out of my stomach. I had a cesarean section. And there are studies that show, how even, where you're born, how you're born, that all plays a part into how we're going to experience the rest of our lives. So for me, growing up in the South, it was difficult. There's so many happy times, right? So many. I don't even need to talk to you about the food of Louisiana and all of that, and crawfishing, and so there was so much happiness. But by nature of honestly being a person of color in this country, I feel like so many of us have dealt with the effects of, systemic racism. And so, for instance, there were things that you understood growing up in the South. As a matter of fact, there was a restaurant that is a great restaurant about, way less than a quarter of a mile from our house. But the saying, and it was called Catfish Bend. And my grandfather taught us that saying when we were young: Catfish Bend, no niggas allowed in, And I kid you not, I never ate in that restaurant. I never ate in that restaurant, I would go, we would get our food, and we would bring it home. And we didn't, the styrofoam boxes of this delicious catfish and hush puppies and fried okra, or what I know of Catfish Bend, those kind of things follow you. And not to even mention the family dynamic, So my parents were divorced at a very young age. I think, they were separated by the time I was 5 or 6. And it just became a way of life. You don't even think about it necessarily. You just think of it as the way of life. And it played a lot on who I am as a person. But, it's funny how you can live in a family and experienced something so different from other members of the family. So I have an older brother, and, you know, their divorce and their separation, I believe it had so much of more of a mental drain on him than it did on me. But the reason that I mentioned that divorce is I feel like, you know, that's something that's so systemic in our culture, in the African-American experience. The relationship of the African-American male and the African-American female is so tense, and it is so, to this day, you know, it's so tense. And believe it or not, you know, going back to my experience, it was actually music that really helped me find my beating on my stance on how I was going to relate to, you know, men, how I was going to have a relationship, you know. And one, you could say that was trauma. When I get ready to tell you some of the songs that I embodied, one could look at it as trauma, or you could look at it as grit and strength. But I grew up listening to, you know, Al Green. Marvin Gaye was my favorite, but he'd have these songs like, you know, you were my wife, my life, my hopes and dreams. For you to understand what this means, let me explain. And it's just a love song, but then he just goes into like, but I have to leave you. I have to go, you know? And I'm just like, well, shoot, how am I ever why would I ever give myself to someone and it seems to be going well just to have to deal with this departure, you know? I really didn't understand that. But if you know, I understood that the women in my family, you know, it was almost like you either fought for yourself and for the love, or you kind of got stepped on, you know? And so you hear it in the songs, you hear it in the music. And, you know, so then, you know, let's fast forward to, you know, teenage years, and you're listening to some hip hop, and trust me, I love my hip hop. I grew up with Master P and Lil Wayne, and I was bumping it in my car like anybody else, you know what I mean? But what I understood as a female and listening to that was like, I got to be hard. I got to be harder than a man if I'm going to survive out here, you know, in a relationship and keep myself together. I got to be hard, and I put myself to the test, you know? So I think, but that, you know, that has an effect on your spirit. That has an effect on your soul. That has an effect on, you know, like I said, how you are in a relationship, and the relationships that you build, you know, that's the fundamental backbone of this society, you know? And so by the time I met Kenny, I had a lot to unpack, Greg. I had a lot to unpack. And when I met him, he was, you know, it's so funny. You said I was his bright light. Thank you so much. When I met him, I felt like I really saw this bright light. And when he made his intentions known to me that, you know, he wanted to be more than a mentee relationship, because I was his mentor, you know, I had to take 10 steps back, you know. I was like, oh, wait a minute, you know, like, no, your light is way too bright. I have too much going on, you know, to, you know, and I just, it really blew me away. So much the fact that I never saw him, initially in that way, because, you know, I had a lot. I had a lot to have to go through to be able to accept that kind of light in my life. And so through a lot of prayer, a lot of prayer, you know, I did. And throughout our relationship, we've been married now for 12 years. And, you know, it's a constant, it's something you have to work on. The first few years, I think, because of just the trauma of growing up as a African-American female in the South, and feeling like you have to fight for your heart and be harder than anybody around and be ready to drop somebody in 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, that's trauma. And so at the beginning of our marriage, you know, even though I feel like I crossed a huge bridge to even get married. Okay, I didn't think I was going to get married. I crossed a huge bridge to get married. The first few years of our marriage, they were tough. They were tough, you know, and he would say, you know, he had a lot of growing to do, and he did, but I had a whole mountain and wall to knock down, to open up my heart and to, you know, do all those things. Yeah. So, I hope I answered your.
I got you. Okay. So from growing up in the South and understanding racism and discrimination to go into a military academy and being one of the few Black females to ever cross that threshold and graduate to being a leader in the Army, a mother, and a wife, and having to deal with all those different obstacles, right? So of course, you know, there were trauma and grief along the way. So, you know, I have to ask you, did your people teach you how to deal with trauma and grief growing up?
You know what? I will say this. And I know you've heard this quite often because we've all experienced it. You know, my parents, my grandparents, because we lived in a multi-generational household. And, you know, I'm actually trying to form that right now. You know, we're living with my mom and my dad right now. They're divorced, but they're staying together. That's a lot of fun. So I would get it from my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, my great-grandparents. It was this understanding that you could not be. You had to move. You know, it was in our everyday upbringing. There was laughter, there was love, but there was a lot of hard work. And you worked hard because if you worked hard, then, you know, the people around you were going to have a better day. You know, I feel like that. And so, you know, the whole idea, if you fall, you get back up. You know, you have to know who you are. You have to know what you stand for. You have to, you just got to push. And I really didn't know anything, anything else. And I think what you're getting, you know, I never saw my mother cry. I don't remember seeing anyone in my family ever just cry or, you know, lay in the bed. You know, my grandfather, he had, you know, diabetes, and I didn't even know, like, understanding that's medicine now and looking back and can't even imagine, you know, what it was like for him to get out of that bed every day to make it to work. He was a deputy sheriff and try to be a pillar of the community and suffering from diabetes. Like, that's insane, you know? So yeah, you just knew to push. There were no tears. The only tears was from us getting spankings, you know? But I think the one thing that I will never forget, the lesson that I was taught, because, you know, we were taught about racism. I wasn't taught about sexism. It's something I had to just experience, but we were taught about, you know, racism. And like I said, it was, you know, it's like, this is the way life is. It's not right, but you have to, it's not, I wouldn't say play the game. It wasn't so much play the game. It's like, this is what it is. Know you're better than that. And I think one of the most important things my mom ever said, though, was make sure that you leave room for love. She made it a point to, you know, tell us that, even though, you know, I would ride to school listening to, you know, Louis Farrakhan, you know what I mean?
Say that one more time.
Because would ride to listen to Louis Farrakhan.
No. What your mom, not Louis Farrakhan, but what your mama told you.
What my mom told me? Yeah, I'm going to go back to, like, you have to love. Like, even though this is the way that it is, even though, you know, there's all this hatred toward you, you know, or just this idea, the whole system is set up to, you know, keep people of color down. Like, even though the system is this way, you have to know that everyone is not that way. That, you know, you have to understand how to love, you know, and she said that once, but it really stuck with me, especially when I got to West Point, you know, because, you know, we're kind of just all thrown in together, and you sink or swim, you know, and you have people on your right, people on your left, and, you know, color really doesn't matter. And I'm so thankful that it was at West Point that I got a chance to actually feel love, regardless of race, you know, from brothers and sisters. Like, when you're having to figure something out and you do it together, and you're just so appreciative for that person next to you. And honestly, you know, and I don't know your experience, but at the prep school, you know, Neil Shank was the first person, you know, rest in peace, the first person that extended a hand to show me how to put together, you know, a bed, to put together the gear, to shine the boots. And, you know, yeah, that's where I like it. It makes the teachings that my mom, or what she said, you know, you need to love, it makes sense. It came together at the prep school, you know, that this racism, it's fake. It's not real. You have to understand it, but you also have to understand that it's not real. It's not what matters in life. And that, you know, keep your love, keep your heart. That's what's real, you know?
Yeah. I like how you said that, and I'm glad you brought Shank to, you know, to the forefront of this. I definitely remember
Shank
him.
Was an angel.
He was. Let's speak on him. Talk about him.
Yeah. Shank. That's what I was saying. Like, it's like he alone, him and a few other people, it's like the type of people that can undo years of racism, you know, even as something as simple as, you know, it was him and like a few other people, like they were always sharing things. And, you know, coming up in a household of, it's 5 of us. So things like, you know, chocolate chip cookies, you know, from Chips Ahoy, and Pop-Tarts, and, you know, that's a commodity. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't always get that. And so stingy may be a good word to explain me a little bit growing up, because you had to fight for your food, you know? And, you know, getting to the prep school, it meant a lot to, you know, have people share, you know, and people of different color, you know, like, to share. And so Neil, like, that was one of his hallmark, you know, things that he would do. He'd share anything. He'd share the clothes off his back. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And he was white. You know what I mean? And before anyone else would, you know, he would. And I just remember him being just super honest. And if, like you said, you know, thinking back on the rest of his personality, you know, he was going to tell you like it was. You know, just a super, super honest person. And, you know, maybe him and his family, maybe they realized for themselves, you know, like, we're not going to, you know, let this made up idea of racism get in the way of truly living and experiencing the human connection. But, you know, it didn't seem like he let anything get in the way of him and his truth, you know. He was, you know, the honest broker all the way.
You bring up a very great point. Right. So to understand this generational trauma of dealing with racism, your grandparents telling you about experiences, and passing that on to you because, they're trying to warn you of what's out there. Right. And understanding that, from a minority standpoint, the whole sense of the word minority, you're less. You're not the majority. You have less. And so to come from a family where you have less, where you're having to fight for scraps, right? And you're taught that there are some people out there that hate you because of the color of your skin. It's a scary feeling. It's a scary thought. And then to sit here and say, okay, well, how do we overcome racism? And you just explained it with Shank in the fact that sharing knowledge.
Sharing cookies.
sharing cookies, right. Sharing your resources to let people know that, like, hey, look, you matter. And it's not that I'm better than you. We're all on the same team, and I'm going to help you accomplish the same goals, and we're going to help each other get through it. So, I'm glad you shared that. I am. It was tough because when we talk about Shank, he committed suicide.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine, like what he was going through in that moment to do that, because how you spoke on him and the fact that, like he had this vibrant energy to him that everybody knew.
Right.
It makes you wonder what changed in the person, what changes in us that we sign up and are so willing to defend our country and go to war, that once we experience it, something in us changed forever. And some people are able to handle it and some people aren't. And so, I want to talk to those that are having a hard time handling it. And that's one of the reasons why, I'm doing this, because I think it's very important for us to talk. You shouldn't have to suffer in silence, and you shouldn't have to suffer alone. And so understanding that you got some people out there that are willing to share their cookies with you is very important.
That's right. That's right. I agree.
Yeah. Man, you got me at a point. I don't know where to go with this interview because there's so many questions that I can ask you.
Yeah.
Just because we went down, we know the same road. Understanding that you grew up from the South, you experienced racism, being a Black female, going to West Point as a minority, being a Black officer, you were in a minority, and then being a wife and raising a family as a Black woman. And so all the fears that you have had to go experience, you are now having to prepare your little ones for that life as well, as well as support your husband who is out there on a daily basis fighting that good fight to, to make America great, the real way, the right way.
And sustain a family. Yeah.
Correct. So, I just want to, I want to open it up and allow you to just, to just talk. Like, which you tell me how you want, to go with this, because
I got you.
It's about how do you deal with PTSD and complicated grief. So, throughout your experiences, right? What were some unhealthy ways that you dealt with your experiences, and how did you correct them so that you had healthy ways of coping with your trauma and grief?
That is a great question, Greg. Man, as you were speaking, I was like, oh, my mind was popping up. I want to share this. I want to share that. I want to share this. I want to share that. But I'll go right into it with one of the things that I suffered. One of the major, I would say, it's like, if there's such a thing, this was a chronic thing that that I did to myself. And at the time, when you are doing something to yourself, you don't realize the coping mechanism. You don't realize that it's based on X, Y, and Z. This is why you are, engaging in these very unhealthy habits. But something that I suffered with from 7th grade all the way through the age of 22, I suffered from bulimia. And, like I said, and that's a long time. Well, why did that start? Why did you start, throwing up your food? Like, why would you start something like that? I started it, I was watching a movie about anorexia, and the young lady on the movie was super thin. And at the time, that's what I wanted to be. I felt different from the other girls that were my age. So, like I said, puberty played a lot into the way my body, type was. And, but to me, it was different from the other little girls, the other girls my age. I had super big shoulders and arms and this like huge back. And I'm like, I didn't like it. And so I'm watching this movie about anorexia and that path that it can take you down, because it followed the young lady's life all the way through adulthood. And the only thing that triggered in my mind was, man, maybe I should try that. Or, man, maybe I should, do that because she's super thin. And, I don't even think at the time I thought about an exit strategy. I just wanted to be thin. I just wanted what I wanted. And, but like I said, so then if you trace back to, okay, why not accept yourself? Why not, just love yourself, accept yourself. And I couldn't have answered that question back then. I felt different, So that lasted, all of that time. And it wasn't until I was about 22 that, well, first of all, it wasn't, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't feel any thinner. I didn't feel, I still felt different from the people around me. I looked different from my best friends. They had this chiseled body and all this and that. And I'm just like, what's not happening here? And, in the meantime, I'm also running, 5 miles a day. And I'm just thankful that I had the space and time to pause and, say, you've got to stop this, you've got to stop this. And I actually and I decided, it was a decision. I decided to stop. And I ended up I did some research online, but I ended up doing a fast, a 7-day juice fast. And that 7-day juice fast, along with prayer, it changed my life. It set me on a path that, because not too long after that, I met my husband. And thankfully, through the grace of God and the universe, whatever, I was healthy enough to have a child, So yeah, and so mentally, I don't even know if I got a chance to really experience that as trauma. Even it was traumatic, but it's not like I had this period of, oh, I should stop, oh, I should really stop. I should really stop. I just, one day thank God. I mean, I know that everyone doesn't, they face challenges differently. It can take years to stop unhealthy habits. But at the meantime, I mean, I had this habit for years, but thankfully, when I decided to stop, I was able to stop. Now, the deeper, that was just a symptom, the anorexia, bulimia, that was just a symptom. Now, looking back, that was the symptom of a deeper issue, and the deeper issue, deeper underlying thing that would cause you to do that, is not loving yourself, and that took some years, even after I was able to quit the unhealthy eating habits. It wasn't until I started studying this medicine that I realized I had issues with self-love, like deep-rooted issues. And, you don't know if that's coming from childhood. I cannot recall any time of any type of abuse. I don't recall, anything like that. So then how is it that this person who has all of this family and all of this, how do you not love yourself, But I think a lot of us suffer from that very underlying issue of self-love. But when I realized it, it was like a light, a lightning bulb went off in my head, like, wow, like, that's what's been happening. Like, that's what would have caused me to do that to my body. Like, and I'm, so if you will, I'll tell the story. And this way I'll kind of introduce a little bit of Chinese medicine with my own personal story of when that light bulb went off that I realized I didn't love myself. So it was probably my second semester in the medicine. I was in California, and, we were learning how to read the pulse. And, so I'll show my wrist on the pulse. When you read the pulse as an East Asian medicine practitioner, you read the pulse you read the radial pulse here on the wrist. And you're not just feeling for, the pulse rate, fast or slow. You're feeling for the qualities of it. And so there's about 32 different qualities that we're taught to read in a pulse. And it can tell you indications of what's going on inside the body. And so the professor, and that's one of our objective ways that we diagnose what's going on with the patient is through the pulse. So this is, one of my first classes in pulse reading. Everyone's really excited because this is the bread and butter of East Asian medicine. And of course, it takes years to learn. But the professor, on day one, she said, let me explain to you the quality of a healthy pulse. The quality of a healthy pulse is like, a ball bouncing, on a wave. It's like, it's kind of happy, a happy bounce, and it's full, but it's not tight. And she's explaining all of this. And so I'm like, okay. Now, meanwhile, while she's explaining this, healthy pulse and the balanced pulse, she does go on to say, like, the majority of human beings, you're not going to just really find this like amazingly healthy, happy pulse, but, you have to have a baseline. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I know my pulse it has to be great. Kind of what you said, Greg. It's like, I've got children. I've got, I'm on this new fresh career. I'm West Point. I'm strong. Like, whoa, like I'm, you know what I mean? Like, I know my pulse is happy, Mm-hmm. And so we, your partner next to you, that's, she was like, okay, now I want you guys to, feel your partner's pulse next to you. And she's not expecting us to have this, we're not going to be East Asian medicine doctors like that, but just get used to feeling pulses. And so my partner takes my pulse. He reads it and he looks at me and he's like, Seneca, I think something is really wrong with you. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you overachiever. How are you going to sit here and diagnose me? You know what I mean? Like, this is our first day of pulse class, of all, And so I just like, oh, okay. I didn't really think anything. But by the next time we had that class, we had different partners. And this partner said the same thing. And to make that, to explain that picture even more, she was a professor at Johns Hopkins. You know what I mean? This is her second career in this medicine, And so when she said, Seneca, I think something's wrong with you, and she called the teacher over. And my professor, Dr. Seneca Vaughn, she's a PhD in East Asian medicine, but then also gynecology from China. So this is so she's feeling my pulse, and now I'm getting a little nervous. And she says, Seneca, I need you to go and get an ultrasound. And as you can imagine, I'm a little afraid, and she doesn't tell me why. She doesn't really say anything. She says, go get the ultrasound, and then you're going to start having treatments here in the clinic. And so to make a long story short, well, I got the ultrasound. I went and got the ultrasound, but they were like, are you in pain? Are you experiencing, heavy bleeding? Are you doing all this? And I'm thinking to myself, no. Like, do I tell them that my East Asian medicine, professor told me to come get it? I decided not to tell them that. I was just like, well, I've gained a little weight and, I'm fatigued. And she said, join the club, honey. So they didn't give me the ultrasound because I wasn't in any pain. So I went back to my teacher and she said, that's okay. It's fine. But we're going to treat you based on East Asian medicine, based on your pulse. And so I went through my history with her. And to make a long story short, I was on, that began my real journey of just really embracing this medicine and what it has to offer. So I began a system of treatments. I was getting treatments twice a week. So that's acupuncture twice a week. And I was on an herbal formula. And I was on that herbal formula for about 6 months. And 3 months into this very in-depth treatment, I was walking with my husband and we had the kids, and I was giving myself a hard time mentally about, I don't know, something crazy. And I just stopped in my tracks and I just said, oh my goodness. Wow. I have been asking my body to do spectacular things really my whole life, but I can just in the past 10 years, I've asked my body, I've pushed my body, I've said, body, you're going to be on a Division I track team. And it did that for me. Body, you're going to climb this mountain, you're going to climb this rope, and you're going to swim across this lake, and you're going to, go up that ladder, and you're going to do gymnastics, and you're going to, you better lose 10 pounds, and you're going to have these children, body, and it dawned on me, and I was just like, oh my God. And I just stopped and I gave myself this really, really big hug. And I just began to thank it for the first time in my life. I mean, who does that? Who thanks their body? But I realized what I have been asking my body to do all these years. And now I'm asking it to carry me through, these very in-depth classes, to carry it through medical school, and I think, it was a treatment that really got me to see, what I'm asking myself to do. It's like getting a chance to get a mirror and look within yourself and to see what's going on. And my body was tired. It was tired, and I think then that's when I realized that I have to love myself. I have to, before I ask my body to do another thing, I need to thank it and nurture it. And that's just a process that's still happening today, but that was the first time that I really felt that and realized that, it was all those years of constantly pushing and pushing and pushing and not loving that could cause something like, anorexia and bulimia.
Yeah. So it's like you had this moment of self-reflection that was so great. It was almost like an out-of-body experience where you could turn and look at yourself, from a metaphysical, from a third-person point of view. and see what you have been doing all these years and understanding and practicing and being humble about it. And it sounds like it was something that was needed. So from that point on, what did
my goodness. What did I do to try to keep that? You know, it's hard, Greg. To this day, I have to, and probably every day, it's like going back to that moment and being in the moment with myself, you know, because when you wake up in the morning, and I know, you know, we hear this so many times, the mind is already spinning about, got to get this done, got to get that done, got to get that done, ... You know, and you have to be, there's the word intentional again about slowing that down and asking yourself, okay, well, does this really have to get done? Or, you know, do I really have to make my hair the flyest hair? You know what I mean? Like, do I really have to? And, you know, some ladies will say, yeah. But, you know, all of this stuff takes work and time. And, but yeah, every single morning. And what helps me to, because I'm not going to lie, when I wake up, my mind is spinning probably like, you know, the majority of everyone else's mind. And so then for me, it's not as easy for me to just get out of bed and like, okay, let me light a candle, or let me light some incense and cross my legs and meditate. You know, I have to have physical activity in order. And I know that I have to move so that my mind can, you know, slow down. Actually, I have to move fast. I have to move my limbs, move my legs, and move it so that my mind can slow down. So every morning, you know, when the mind starts racing, I'll try to say a prayer, but it's not until I, you know, put my tennis shoes on, get out that door and take about 10, 15 steps where everything starts to move and I can breathe. And so, yeah, so I walk about 3 miles every day, you know, every day, every day, you hear me? Just to try to be in that space where I know is a space of peace, a space of calm, a space of appreciation, a space of health and healing every day. You know, I have to create that.
Yeah. Okay. So, we're going to get a little deep. And so,
yeah,
because I want to talk about how do you get into this space of peace and calm. And so we talked about Neil, we talked about Shank, right? So him, and then also, you know, with Emily. Mm-hmm. When you found out about their deaths, how did you handle that?
Yeah.
And you can speak on both, or you can speak on one. It's your choice.
Yeah. I'll speak on both because it was the same. I did the same thing, you know, with both. I got on the phone with friends, and, you know, you look for that community of people who understand, or at least understand what you may be feeling. And, but yeah, I remember, you know, for Emily, you know, it was a friend of mine that told me. She was already really close with the family, and it's just kind of shock, you know, it's just kind of shock and sadness. But at the same time, you know, for both, at the same time, how I've processed both of their deaths is it's the reason to be, it's another reason to be intentional about how I'm living, you know. It just confirms that we don't know when it's our time, you know? And so really, truly try to make the most out of every day. I think I process their deaths with that walk every single morning, every morning, putting my mind in a space so that I can use this life that I have. Because, the reality is, how were they, to God, to the universe? And honestly, part of how I process things, I let it go from my mind. So I don't really go into the details. I just won't let my brain go into the details of why not me. I just won't. I just won't do it. But instead of the why not me, it's, with this time that I do have, I am going to use it the best of my ability. They were both bright lights, and you always think about what would someone else be doing if they were here. And with the understanding of you cannot be that someone else, but you can be the best version of yourself. So you take that best version of yourself and you do something with it every day. And I think, that's how I process it. It's an ongoing thing. And, but yeah.
Damn. So tell us, what were some signs that you were dealing with trauma and grief through all of this? How did you know?
I didn't. I don't think sometimes you don't know. And like I was saying about my personality, and I think, so there's people handle things differently, there's a spectrum of how you're going to handle, like two people can be going through the exact same thing, but there is just a spectrum of how you're going to react, And I fall somewhere on the spectrum of, maybe it's a little bit of naivete, like I allow myself to be naive. Maybe it's a little bit of, just stubbornness. And maybe it's, like you said, the upbringing of, well, there's really, what are you going to do? You're going to lay down and cry, or are you going to just keep moving, And so I think with the combination, but that's what I mean. It's like, so everyone falls along a spectrum with multiple types of combinations based on, where they're coming from, their background, like how they're going to process grief, how they're going to, manage that. And I think as I'm getting ready to take I'm in the process of studying. I'm studying for my boards, right, to be licensed as an acupuncturist. And the one thing that I'm understanding is having to accept all the different types of people that are there, having to accept all the myriad of emotions that people experience it, and just be present and just be there. Not really yielding or not really making too much of your own judgment about how a person maybe should handle it, because it's so different. And if you will, I will read this quote that I have. It's from a very famous book. It's actually the fundamental book of East Asian medicine. It's called the Huangdi Neijing. And there's a quote from this book. It's like 2,000 years old. But I want to read that to you because I think it's fitting for that question. And from a practitioner's standpoint, how to help people or how to, be there with them, with what they're experiencing. And it says, practice witnessing your patient. Practice witnessing your mind. Practice witnessing your mind's reaction to your patient. yield, surrender, accept their path, cultivate non-assertive action. That quote, I think, explains how to be present with someone when they're grieving. Accepting what is presented in front of you and taking non-assertive action. And that's really hard. That's really hard to do. And it's something that I know I need to work on as I, go through this journey of trying to, be a doctor of this medicine that's heavily rooted in the mind. But yeah, and I think we can take that approach with ourselves. We are our own best doctor. You take that approach with yourself, as in pay attention to what you're feeling, allow it to show itself, and maybe just yield to it, and I think when I've experienced grief, and when I experience future grief, I hope that I can use those words, for myself. Just yield, take non-assertive action. Maybe, that means, and I think the assertive action when we're dealing with grief, it could be the things that cause a lot of unhealthy habits. We think we're taking action to make ourselves feel better, but if we're just moving real fast, or we're doing, X, Y, and Z, so addictions and all those things, I feel like that's assertive action toward managing your grief. And what this quote is saying is take non-assertive action, yield to it. And that's not easy to do, especially when you have to keep a roof over your head, especially when you have to put food in your mouth, in your family's mouth. Who has time to yield, right? But it's what I try to do every day, Greg. And I think that's really the answer of how I manage it is an everyday thing. Like, yeah. And I it's not that I get up and I walk and I'm like, I'm trying to walk to lose, this extra weight. Mind you, I mean, that's like a history for me, but, that's a nice thing to do, but it's the mind, it's the mind that I'm trying to, put into focus when I get up out of that bed every day.
You're taking, whether it be negative energy, and you're producing a positive outcome, meaning you're walking because it's healthy. You're also talking about your mindset. So preparing yourself to deal with trauma and grief internally, right? Because when you said it, it reminded me of what we used to do playing football, where, I would go to the CEP, the Center for Enhanced Performance, at school, and I would literally have video of walking through a certain play and me going through my reads and figuring out what I had to do to make that play. And so mentally put my mindset in that predicament, right, allowed me on game day, once I saw it, to react and actually make that play and feel confident in making that play. And so, when you talk about the quote and you talk about the life experience, it's almost as if you need to prepare yourself mentally to go through trauma and grief so that you don't have these outbursts of anger and depression, so that you can manage and navigate it. I like how you said that. I do. I like that quote.
It's every single day. I don't miss a day. I don't miss a day. And as you were speaking, it reminded me of a word that, is this word that I'm getting ready to say is basically the fundamental, it's our thing for East Asian medicine is prevention, prevention of emotional, mental emotional disorders. It's how I try to prevent it because, it's in my family. I think I know that it runs in my family. So my grandfather, he had schizophrenia, and my father, he's never received help. But I know, he's never spoken to anyone, and the man does the best that he can every single day, but he should probably see a therapist, you know what I mean? And you could diagnose him with, X, Y, and Z, but I know it's in my, my family, and as it is in, like you said, in so many of our families. But so I try to prevent, just waves, and, but that is what we do with this medicine. This medicine is about prevention. That is our marquee thing. It's said, the best doctor in East Asian medicine is not the doctor that, can cure, or try to cure cancer. The best doctor is the one that will prevent it. And it's the idea, when you have a patient, you get to know that patient, and through the use of acupuncture, Chinese herbs, Tai Chi, Qigong, and, the use of guidance to, a more balanced way of life. So you're seeing a patient about once a week, and these are these are people that you get to know very closely. And so you get to notice the little things about, that's changing in their body based on how we diagnose, looking at the pulse, looking at the tongue. There's subtle changes that you see. And so you're able to do acupuncture, use the herbs to rebalance, that person, what they have going on. And also, like I said, the counseling is actually a huge part, because once they leave your office, if they maintain, unhealthy habits, then, every time they come in, you're like starting from square one. So, it's an accumulative effect. But the key thing that I'm trying to bring to light here is getting to know that person. And it's the subtle things that you do every time they come in that keeps them even before, let alone mental, emotional events that can happen. But, even the common cold, pain, whatever, that's the whole point of this medicine is preventing, these huge occurrences, because once they're there, it is extremely difficult to pull back the layers. It's much easier to prevent the layers from accumulating than it is to, pull back the layers.
So let me ask you this question, right? So when you talk about acupuncture, depending on your experience, certain physical parts of the body keeps a tally or keeps a score of it. And I use this because I think of the book that I read, The Body Keeps a Score. And so from a physical standpoint, like with acupuncture, like, are there certain regions in the body that holds that tense, that stress, that pain, that anger, that sadness?
Absolutely, 100% yes. The way that the body is designed, and I have this. I'll share my screen with you really quick. You can't share. That's okay.
I got it.
But the way.
There you go. Now you can share it.
Oh, you get it. I can share. Okay. That's all good.
Fine. She came prepared.
So what I have in front of you, this is a chart of the channels that are along the body. So this is how we perceive the human body. And as you can see, everything is connected. One channel can run from your foot all the way up to your head. And along those channels are acupuncture points. So what you see in front of you, these are 12 primary channels, but there are also, and then I'll go back to myself, at a deeper level, there are other channels that they work specifically for doing what you're saying, holding our trauma, whether it's physical, mental, like the body is connected in such a way that there are deeper levels inside the body that hold these things for us so that we can go on about our day, And like I said before, anything from the common cold that you had, a really bad cold that you had at the age of 7. And, if you weren't, intentionally getting it out of you, or if the body couldn't get it out of you, or you didn't go and seek, assistance to get it out of you, that cold, it goes latent in the body. So if a common cold can go latent in a body, of course, abuses can go latent in the body. Major accidents, if you don't rid it, it goes latent. And it's the same with the way, like I said, when the outside environment affects our mental and emotional stance, those, in order to keep moving, the body is all about trying to keep you breathing. Yeah. So it will push it latent. And the thing about it is, as we age, the body's ability to hold it in latency weakens because our body is aging. That's a normal physiological process. Yeah. And that's why, things like diabetes, things like, all of a sudden, you don't know why you got this unexplainable shoulder pain. You know what I mean? Back pain, knee pain. The body, and we're talking pain and things that, that type of pain where you're like, man, where did that come from? I don't remember bumping my elbow. I don't remember throwing the body has lost its ability to hold it in latency.
That makes sense. So let me ask you, right, with understanding that, the latency and what the body, keeps score of and is able to hold as well as resist, what's been the toughest part of your journey? What's been the hardest thing for you to hold together?
I'm thankful enough, Greg. I feel like I found this medicine. So I started studying at 32, and because of those acupuncture treatments that I've been receiving.
Our age now, look.
I'm sorry. Well, see, I didn't tell our age. I just told you at the age of. See, I know we're older than that. Okay, so because of the treatments that I have been receiving, my body, and it's intentional. Like, so when you go in and you get a treatment, the doctor, like I said, the part of that is getting to know you, so that we can know where to put those needles based on what you're explaining. So when you go in and you say, oh man, I'm experiencing back pain, we know, and you didn't have any physical trauma, we know, okay, there's some emotional, there's some things that we need. And then so we pinpoint where on the body we need to either, release it or push down further, allow the body. And so I've been getting these treatments for the past, 6 years. And so when I have little pains, I go in and I get my acupuncture. So, I've been blessed in that way. But, I'm a human being, and, the day-to-day stresses are real. And so there are, aches and pains or just things that pop out, that you deal with. And so 9 times out of 10, how I deal with it, I know, okay, especially if I've, had my acupuncture treatment, I'm on my herbs, I just need to go sit down. Better yet, I need to go take a nap. Because when we are sleeping, that's the body's, that's when the body is doing its most healing. It's when we're sleeping. But acupuncture, herbs, it's a part of my life. It's a part of my children's life. Just trying to strengthen what I got going on, even through all the abuse that I've put it through in the past, just to strengthen what I have right now. And, like that.
Yeah. So tell us about this. Let's get into like the actual niche of acupuncture.
Yeah.
What can a person expect? Does it hurt? How long will it take until you see results? Is it something that is routine maintenance that you have to continually do, or is it like a one and done depending on the situation? Let's talk about it.
Sounds like you've had it before. The questions that you're asking me are great questions, and so you have, yay!
So and I have nerve damage from a car accident, being deployed.
Wow.
And so that sciatic nerve in the back, like it's real bad. So I used to have episodes where like my leg would just give out. And I would,
wow, yeah.
And I mean, I couldn't feel anything on my right side. I could put my hand on a burner and wouldn't feel nothing.
And
wow. Right. And so,
I
tried acupuncture, of course, while I was still on active duty, it was through the military. So like, I know a little bit.
I think it sounds to me like you had some extensive treatments, and you know a lot. You learn the most from experiencing it. That's probably one of the greatest lessons that I ever had in school, was actually getting the treatments and feeling it, for myself, seeing how it works, getting, being a patient on the table. But to answer your question, so if it's your first time, it's okay to be very nervous. You go into, to the doctor, and they ask a lot of questions, everything from, I don't know, what are the color of your fingernails to, when was the last time you had a bowel movement and what color was it, So, I mean, it's a very detailed workup, but that is so that, that is how we get to know your body and your mind, and so, but when you go in on your first, treatment, it's about a 45-minute process. You answer those questions, and then the doctor would diagnose you based on your pulse and your tongue. And the acupuncture, the needles stay in for about 30 minutes. And based on what your chief complaint is, like, why are you there today? Based on that chief complaint, that determines how often you're going to need the treatment. So chronic things that you've been dealing with for a really long time, you may need to, anywhere from 2 months to 6 months, once a week or twice a week. And like I said, it's about a 45-minute process, each treatment. But acute things like the common cold or things like that, you may only need, you might be one and done, you never have to see anybody again. But once again, the idea of this medicine is about prevention. The idea is that you go in, everyone should go in now, get to know, their doctor and work on preventing issues, but, this is the United States and I know it doesn't work that way. And even with prevention, if you're trying to go in just for overall wellness, you may be seen, once a month for, some time. But yeah. And then the other question you asked, I think you asked, when do you see effect immediately? And that depends as well. It depends on what you're coming in for. It depends on how long you've had it. You can see an effect anywhere from 20 minutes after the treatment to a week later,
Got you. Okay. No, that's very helpful. I mean, I've been sitting here listening to you and talking, and it just sounds like you just have your shit together.
Oh my goodness, Greg, you're so funny.
I mean, it's like, do you ever have moments where you break down? Like just when you sit back and you think about all the things that you've been through and all the struggles, do you ever have those moments where it's just very heavy? And what do you do during those times?
I try to avoid those moments as I'm getting older as much as possible. Let me tell you, because it is so draining, right? Like, right. As we get older, having those moments, you might be out of commission for 3 weeks.
Yeah, that pursuit of happiness is real. Not just financially, but mentally and emotionally.
Man, I try, but absolutely, I've had those moments, and it generally comes in the form of when I am just depleted. So generally, those moments happen when you've just push, and you're depleted, and you're running low on energy, low on sleep, and then you just blow up. The first time that I had it in my marriage, I had just given birth to my daughter. I think she had been, she was about a month old. And I think I was still holding on to some of these ideas that the woman of the house should, make sure that there are 3 meals, so basically the breakfast needs to be packed in the bag, or made before he leaves. Also lunch, and then dinner needs to be on the table, and it is delicious and hot, and the clothes better be folded, and this house better look immaculate, and you better look immaculate, See, these societal norms, I think they, what we consider, they play more on our mental health than anything else. But that was kind of like the first time in my marriage that I just kind of experienced this meltdown, because you can't do all, it's impossible. That is impossible. But if you look back, you see your grandparents or your grandmother, and they had 3 meals a day. They went and, it's amazing what it seems like the older generations, have done. And, but I'm failing at this, and I had just left the military, so I wasn't bringing in that additional income. And so, even more, I'm like, Jesus, I am failing, like I am struggling and I am exhausted. And that, how can you be pretty and exhausted? And so I had a breakdown. I just remember, Kenny, oh my God, like I just, and he didn't know, like, of course he's just going to eat the dinner and eat, he's not knowing, because that's the whole idea is you don't show that you're unraveling. You have to do this, like a what is it, like the swan of, their feet are moving like this in the water, but they're gliding so gracefully. He didn't know. He just saw me gliding gracefully. And then finally I went bottoms up, like, and he just was like, Seneca, you have to, like, I didn't ask you to do this. Like, and I'm like, I know, but I'm supposed to. And he was just like, stop right there. That's stop. Like, this is what you even talk about. Like, why do you even have these ideas that this is what you're supposed to do? So, and I would like to say that just that one time that I got it, like, but no, like you said, being a mother, being a wife, and it's been a process to let some of the things that just aren't important, to let that go. And so 9 times out of 10, when I am, losing my cool, it's because, I'm trying to, be everything for everyone. And, but it takes time to understand there's a balance. Of course, there is things that you have to do and things you want to be, but there's like a fine line that you walk. But part of that is taking care of yourself and knowing how to do that and finding time for yourself. But it's a constant thing that I work on constantly.
Yeah. Let's talk about getting help. Through all of this, did you have to get help from like a mental health professional? And if you did, did their race, gender, and background play a part?
I have not actually. I did have a class. I had a class with, that was part of one of our, for a semester, and that, a psychology class. And it was one of the most rewarding classes in this medicine that I've had experienced so far. And it was just eye-opening. First of all, in that class, I realized that I should have been getting help. My husband should be getting help. Like, we all need to be, speaking to someone. And that class I felt like it was like a semester of counseling, So yeah, I've had counseling. It was in that class and it was phenomenal. You have to write this paper. And that was the first time that I, about some of your struggles and how you overcame them. That was the first time that I ever spoke openly about, my issue with my diet and, anorexia, bulimia, So being able to get that out in the open was huge. It's one thing to go through it, but then another thing to feel comfortable talking about it, But every day you just lay yourself bare. And it's been great for me. And, and it was in that class that I also understood that you mentioned, like you said, did I choose, like, if I did seek someone out, would I look at race? Would I look at, sex to determine who I wanted to, be, to be my counselor? And before that class, I probably would have said, no, I wouldn't have sought anybody out. But it was in that class that we had to talk about our biases that we hold and how important it is for us to understand that we probably have bias and that we need to come to terms with it. Because if you are counseling someone and it's one thing to just not understand how a person, what their environment is like, but it's another thing to not understand it and then to judge them based on, their environment, So, yeah, it was in that class that I really understood, as a practitioner, it's important for me to understand that I may have bias. I have to work on those biasness and, clear the air, get that out of the way, So, yeah, a whole semester I did. I had counseling for a whole semester and it was great.
Okay, well, we're getting ready to close and wrap this up. What advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now?
You know what, Greg? It's an easy question, but it's also a very tough question. Because there are a lot of things that you would be like, ooh, younger self, don't you go in that room. Younger self, don't even look in that person's direction. I would like, there are so many things that you can just kind of go back and do, but if you did that, would you be the person that you are? Would you learn from the mistakes that you made? So I would have to answer that question is, I would tell my younger self, you go, girl. Keep fighting a good fight. It's going to be rough, but, get out there. Don't look back.
Understood. No, that makes sense. You have to learn from your mistakes. You learn more from your mistakes than you do your successes. So that definitely
absolutely
makes sense. Well, look, I appreciate you coming on. I just want to give a minute so you can tell everybody how we can get in touch with you and tell them about your practice and how they can find you.
Thank you so much, Greg. So right now I am studying for my license. And this has been a very interesting period in time because school is done and you don't have the requirements of, have to be a class every day. So you're on your own trying to figure out how to pass 4 exams. That's what I'm in the middle of right now. But I'm looking at being finished in October. And I'm currently living in Louisville, Kentucky. My husband is stationed at Fort Knox. So definitely we're going to open up a clinic soon. One of the things I like about this medicine is just kind of the flexibility that we have, and private practice and so forth. And I want to start a private practice in Louisville's West End. And, that community is an African-American, it's a Black and brown community. And so this medicine, I want to take it there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to working under some really great practitioners already here in the city. Young Ming Acupuncture here in Louisville is one of them. The doctor there, she has treated my mother and my father, and she's a phenomenal doctor. And the way to move forward in this medicine, you need a mentor. You need a mentor. So I'll see about that. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And right now I am on LinkedIn. I am still in the process of getting my social media game up to par. So look forward to that. And Greg, you'll be the first person that I let know when I kind of just, cut the ribbon on that. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to this career and this journey.
Good. Well, look, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. I definitely got some things to put in my toolkit. And I learned, a bit more about you. So, I appreciate having a friend and a sister in you. And much love to you and your family. So thank you so much for being you.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you. I look forward to our continued friendship.
All right, now. Well, look, to all of you Guards Down fans out there that are listening, I hope that you stay safe, stay focused, and stay engaged. I hope you got something out of this because I truly did. Find your tribe and do the best you can do each and every day. Yeah.
You've been listening to Guards Down with Greg Washington. PTSD and complicated grief are very real. About 8 out of every 100 people will have PTSD at some point in their lives. About 20 to 54% of people with complicated grief will simultaneously suffer from major depressive disorder. And that's why shows like this are hugely important. Raising awareness for PTSD and complicated grief. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hook up with us at guardsdown.com. weareiron.org, on Facebook at Guards Down, and find us on YouTube and Instagram.